Welcome to Lean Into Leadership, where we lead the conversation about anything and everything leadership related. On today's episode, Melo joins the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Lean Into Leadership. We got something special for you today, a new little spin-off series called Leadership in 20, featuring leadership students and campus students as well. Today we got Melo on the show.
Yes,
a little
sir.
bit of a twist to that though. 20 minutes, that's it. Once it hits 20 minutes, this interview's over. So we're going to have some fun with it. We're going to get into it. The first question I think we have is who you are and what are your leadership roles on campus and how have you gotten involved? You have a cool story. So if you want to jump into that, have some fun with it. I'd love to hear it.
All right, cool. Yeah, so my name's Melo. That's short for Romelo. A lot of people don't know that. From Saginaw, Michigan. Graduated high school in 2019, moved to Lansing and went to community college. Graduated from there in 2022, then came here in the fall of 2022. And, you know, coming here, I had some options, but this is where my heart took me. And now I'm here. I've gotten involved in a lot of things, Greeks, leadership, student activities, CM Life, few clubs, organizations, you know, just trying to see, you know, where I fit in.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So you're obviously the viewers that know you, right, as you know, our chief technology officer on the show. You're always at a little Melo moments in the show as well, which we love. But you really have a kind of that passion, right, for content creation, I would say, but kind of infuse that in some unique ways. You've done some really cool videos on Leadership Institute Instagram or Facebook. You can find them for Safari promotion and some other things as well. You have your own Instagram, which we'll link in the description too, that you can kind of check out. Melo's style. It's super cool and super unique, but how did you kind of get started in that? I'm kind of curious. Like, what made you want to get into that content creation?
Believe it or not, when I was real younger, I watched a lot of YouTube, and I was very much a fan of a lot of people who I watched. And I didn't know that people made money off of YouTube. So I'm like, yo, maybe I can make some money at a really young age and just, you know, be a YouTuber. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I wanted to do. And I was begging my mom for a MacBook because I always wanted Final Cut Pro. Like, that's what I wanted to use, Final Cut Pro. I just liked how it was set up. And I would film on my iPhone, and my mom got me a MacBook. It was real old, but like I made it work. And I would make videos and do vlogs and stuff like that. And at first there was no passion because there was that in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm just kind of trying to be famous and make money kind of thing. Uh-huh. But after a while, I started to really develop a passion towards it because I'm like, wow, like I'm really showing who I am and like creating it and like kind of storytelling because that's kind of what vlogs are. And I really started to love it. And even though I was in high school, I didn't really have a lot of time. I realized like now things are kind of adapting, and you know now instead of videos being horizontal, they're now vertical. Instead of it being longer, it's more shorter. So I'm like, instead of sitting here trying to plan out what trip I'm gonna go to and film it, like maybe I could just do some casual stuff,
right?
You know, and film it. Short form content kind of was something that I felt like was, I won't say easier for me, but more doable with the tight schedule that I have being in school. And I ended up starting to really like to promote things, like whether it's a certain organization or a certain event or a certain person even. That was something that I felt like I can really do and like give my all into. So yeah, that's really how I got into it, was, you know, wanted to be a YouTuber, you know, and still kind of do. Like, yeah, I mean, you get to express yourself, right, you know, so
it's cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because, you know, you ask younger folks now today, and you want, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's influencer, YouTuber, right? Like, I'm talking about younger, you know, like elementary school age kids. And like when we were at that level, it really wasn't a thing. I mean, YouTube kind of was growing, but it was really kind of still unknown at that time. And so it's interesting that you know, wanted to do that as a little bit older, but I think that was still kind of new, right? It was unique, telling people that you wanted to create content and stuff. I got to ask you too, because you've created a lot of content, you've put yourself out there, especially in like that vlog format. How did you kind of, I think there's a natural fear of kind of putting your content online, right? For some people. And so how did you kind of overcome that? And how did you kind of just I'm just going to go for it, right? Kind of launch, and start your content creation, if that makes sense.
This is actually so funny. So there was a girl who I used to watch from Pennsylvania who did vlogs. And I would hear her talk about like how people in her school kind of tease her, make fun of her kind of thing. And I didn't understand that because I thought she was the coolest girl in the world. And I kind of wanted to do what she did. So I think in my head, because I thought YouTubers were so cool, the thought of like being like cringe or putting myself out there just never like resonated.
Really?
Like that was never a thought growing up. I'm just like, I'm just going to film something and post it. That I thought YouTubers were just the coolest people because they were expressing truly who they are. And like, that's something that I strive for, is to express truly who you are. But now it's like, now here I am. I have to tap back into that same person that I was back then, who just wanted to be the cool YouTuber and just didn't really care, you know. And I'll get there. It takes practice
for sure.
Because I haven't really been making a lot of personal content for myself, and I really want to start.
You should.
Yeah, and I need to.
That's cool, though. You're like proud of that work that you did, which I think is important too. Like, again, it's your creative content. I think that's the biggest thing too. If you're viewing and you wanted to start, a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, whatever it might be, like your content, like that's what you speak, that's what and so like people are kind of dogging on that, like it's not their content, right? It's you. And I think that's really cool about this kind of the virtual age we've seen growing up, and I think, and also what the future is going to hold with so much new technology advances, is like that creative side. Yeah,
I think expressing yourself through the internet is a form of leadership. Like you get to speak your mind, that freedom of thought, the freedom of whatever, you have your platform where you can speak your mind, talk, do whatever. If you want to do book reviews or cook, like you have that freedom, and you may inspire someone else to, create. So if anything, that's my form of leadership, is trying to lead by example, by trying to be authentically me, and unapologetically me.
Yeah.
So.
And that's cool. And again too, and I think there's different ways to get into the content game. Of course, like we're now in 2024, crazy to think about, and social media has been around for really been strong for a decade, I would say over a decade, but really when it started to really take off, I think in the mid 2010s. But it's interesting too, because when we talk about the content creation side of it, you can find ways to monetize that, right? Where I think a lot of people are heading to, which is great, or you can do it because you want to do it, right? And like you said, that creative platform, and there's different ways you go about it, and so there's not a right or wrong way. It's just what you want out of it. And I think if you're passionate about that message, right, or something that you love, put it out there, right? Maybe it helps people. And of course, hopefully you're doing it for a good reason as well, but you do have that leadership message behind that. And I'm kind of curious, like, how you use your content, your platform, or even when you kind of, are doing that for other people. What's your kind of why behind that, or your vision for your message, I guess, if that makes sense?
I think what I do is I show people that, like, if I can do it, you can do it. Leading by example is like my biggest thing. I have to lead by example. Right. I can't just sit here and like tell people to do this and tell people to do that. Like Dan says, you could talk the talk, but are you walking the walk? And we're not perfect. Sometimes we don't always walk the walk, but I would hope that when I'm walking, someone's watching and they get inspired. Because that's all I know how to do, is lead by example.
I love that. And I think really what I'm trying to say is you never really know who's watching, right?
Yeah.
And what are you doing when the spotlight isn't on you, right? It speaks on the character, right?
Yeah.
But that ties into modeling the way, or leading by example, which I vibe with too, right? I think that's part of my leadership style as well, or approach to leadership. But I definitely see that in you too, and I think that's very inspirational, what you do and the message that you put out there. And there's students, that are impacted by the content that you create in a positive way, and I think that themselves gives them that confidence to maybe do something similar, or in their own way, right? Whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be content creation, which is cool. That's just an important point that I think is super important to highlight as well, of just, again, modeling the way, or leading by example, walking the walk.
Right. I advocate for everybody, men, women, non-binary, whoever, you know, young, old. If anyone wants to feel inspired by me, like, cool, like they can. I think one sort of targeted demographic is obviously African American males. In America, we are the most, I guess, hated demographic here. We don't really owe anybody anything. I'm gonna do me, you know, and if that means that a little young black boy sees me and he's like, well, he's doing it, I could do it too. That's a strong demographic that I try to target too. Is I want someone who looks like me too to you know, see me and be like, oh, you know, okay, you know, because me, like my idols, they don't look like me, you know, and that's okay because I was still inspired by their messages. But there's some people out there who need that. Some people out there need somebody who resembles them in some sort of way to show them that this is possible. And for me, bringing back Dan, he said this before. If you want to like kind of tackle a certain issue, you can't just walk the other way on the escalator, you know, because you're just going to stay on one spot. You have to like run. You have to like change the meta narrative, basically, is what he said. And like me, that's like my main goal, is to change the meta narrative of not only my demographic, but whoever, you know, and obviously I'm not perfect. I'm not like the ideal model, you know what I'm saying? But that's another thing too, is that I can make mistakes, hold myself accountable. And so that young person who looks at me goes, well, he's not perfect. Right. Yeah, I'm not perfect. You know what I'm saying? So they feel more relatable, you know, and it feels more possible. And I think that's the reason why I may have got that influential on the disc, is because I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, you know. And nowadays we live in a world where you know, you can't be vulnerable, especially being a black man. Like, black man is depicted as aggressive and all these, you know, negative stereotypes and even quote unquote positive stereotypes. I'm breaking all of that. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing me. The world needs that. Yeah. You know, the world needs people to literally be a leader. Sometimes leaders just walk alone, you know, until eventually some people catch on. Then more people come and more people come and more people come. Like, hey, I think sometimes there's days where I'm like, man, I'm crazy, you know, but hey, I guess I'm gonna be crazy until one random day it becomes normal.
For sure. I think it's like you're part of your brand though, right? Or how you show up. And your point on vulnerability, and you talked about it a little bit ago, like you can't be authentic if you're never vulnerable, right? Because you're not showing up as your true self. Right. And I think there's a lot of pressures, right? And it's a tricky thing because sometimes I think people are like, you have to be vulnerable, right? And I don't think that's fair either. Like, I think it just depends on where you are in a certain place at a certain time, kind of thing. Like, you're going to be more vulnerable people you're comfortable with, right? And there's some people that you're comfortable with that you don't want to be as vulnerable around, right? Everyone's different in that way too. But to your point, you're carving your own path, right? And that's important too, especially in our world where I think a lot of the times we have, sometimes we call them parrots, like people just kind of copying other people and stuff like that. And that's okay. Like, but it takes people to kind of, again, carve their own path and to figure things out, to build that inspirational movement. And of course, eventually, like you mentioned, you're going to need those followers or people that are going to help you along the way. That are inspired, but that takes time too. I think you're doing that work though, and stuff like that. So, which is cool.
And it's not all suns and roses. Like, it's definitely a lonely journey. You know, there's days where I feel like I don't have any friends. I know I do. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes I get in my head because I'm like, you know, I'm taking this path alone. And I'm not trying to say that everyone else is taking other people's paths, because we are all individuals. There's 8 billion people, 8 billion of us on this planet. We are all unique individuals. My thing that I always say is you have the power to tap in and embrace that individuality of yourself. A lot of people don't, because because let's be honest, it's a scary journey.
Yeah, it is.
It's very scary. Yeah. So it's like, I would rather, you know, hang out with this friend group and be just like them and make sure that I'm in accordance of what they got going on. Oh, what's trendy? All I'm gonna do is trendy, because if I don't do what's trendy, then I'm gonna get outcasted. Right. I've been outcasted my entire life. You know. Okay, cool. I was so much an outcast in high school, and I embraced it, that by the end of my senior year, I was the most respected in my high school, and everybody was happy to see me because I was being my authentic self, you know?
For sure. That's a really interesting point too, and I think even for maybe people coming into college, right? I think we see it, right, in high school and middle school, just through the school system. Like, there's kind of those cliques, right? Or you kind of have that identity. Maybe it's an athletic, maybe it's an art or something, and you kind of just stick in those little groups. And not everybody, right? But I think that's more than normal. I think it's common for people to do. Yeah. And you get to college, right? And all that's gone, most likely. Again, you could find that stuff, and I think that, and maybe if you love it, that's great too. But like, I think that's an always interesting point is early on, and when you're kind of on your own, if you do go off to campus or somewhere else, and you got to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have that core group of friends. Maybe you do still in your support system, but you're not as close as you were in high school or in school or wherever it may be. And then you get there, and it's like, what am I gonna do, right?
Yeah.
I think you see a lot of people like, this is a second chance for me. This is a way that I can recarve or reshape what I want to do in the world and want to be. And I think that's a really cool time for a lot of people, and it's a really important time. And I think that's what we do through leadership development here. You know, I think obviously Safari, right? We get those early students, and you know, it's a 2.5 day program, right? And so it's early on, and most people are just worried about starting college, right? And it's just to welcome students, but it's the stuff after that, right? I think it's super important that programs like Leadership that we host and things like that, where you can really sit down, like, how do I want my vision? What do I want the world to be like? And feel inspired and feel like you can do it. And I think that's really cool. And kind of going back to one of your earlier points, because I'm curious, when you kind of found that passion to be a role model or to kind of lead the way, like, how did you find that? Was there like a moment that it kind of connected for you, or like a catalyst moment, or were you just kind of always that way?
I like when I make other people happy, and I don't know if that's selfish, but hey, that's how I feel. Okay. I love when I put a smile on people's face, whether it's buying them a Christmas gift or doing something so simple, you know, because some people feel like they don't have anyone, right? You know, and if I could be the one that like goes, hey, like, I'm here for you, like, I like that. It makes me feel good. That's really like the one thing that gives me meaning. You know, I'm very much a people person. Okay. And this is where it kind of contradicts. That's why the journey that I take can be so hard, because here I am, I have to be an outcast all the time. It's not that I have to, it's just I just like doing what I want to do. Yeah. You know, and sometimes people don't understand where I'm coming from, and they don't get me, and they don't feel connected to me. And that can hurt me in a way, because I want to show you that, like, I'm here for you, you know? And we talked about this before. I believe that love is the most strongest thing ever. You know what I'm saying? The reason, and this is my opinion, I think the reason why there's so much hate on this planet is because some of those people never experience love, and when they get it, they don't know how to accept it because it's so foreign, it's so new. Yeah. They feel like they don't deserve it, you know. But everyone deserves love, you know. Even the worst people on the planet deserves love, you know, because it's the most powerful force in the universe.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So that's what it really comes down to, is I do this out of love. Okay. You know, and really think about this. This is a question for the audience to reflect on. Do you do nice things because you want to be seen, or because you don't want to do wrong things and face the consequences? Or, like, are you genuinely doing that out of the kindness of your heart? You know, and there's a lot of people like that on this planet who are only good because they don't want to suffer the negative consequences. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to deal with the principal. They don't want to deal with the higher ups, you know. So they choose to follow orders, but they don't really want to.
For sure. Like, that's a good point too. Like, why, like, the why behind what you do, right? Is, again, and I don't, you know, it depends too. I think sometimes that reassurance or that validation is important too, in certain ways. But are you using that in the right moments, right? Or is it almost like you have that validation, you need that gratification or validation constantly, right? Is it an addiction, right? Yeah. And I think that's sometimes where we get into trouble too, because that's when we want to fit in, right? Or follow the trends, because we want people to accept us and like us, which is very important, right? That's valid too. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't want to feel accepted, right? And things like that. But
we're human, we want that connection.
Exactly, right? We're social creatures, right? it's in our DNA. It's how we're wired and stuff like that. But how are you doing it, right?
Yeah.
And stuff. And so that's a really interesting point as well. What do you want your leadership legacy to be? And, you know, whether that be, you know, at CMU, it could be in your life. I know it's a tough question to ask, but right now, and it might change. But how do you want to, like, what do you want that legacy to be, or what's it look like, if that makes sense?
I know right off the back, whether my name is attached to it or not, I want people to be okay being themselves.
Okay.
You know, and the reason why I say that, because I have to go in depth, and this is me being vulnerable. There was a point where, you know, I wasn't okay with being myself.
Okay.
And guess what happened? I started becoming somebody who I didn't know. You know, and I couldn't control myself. I felt off.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like I didn't have any life in me. You know, I was making impulsive decisions and just whatever, you know, just going with the flow, you know, being an Agent Smith, you know. And right now, actually, like, I'm in the process of tapping back into, you know, who I know I truly am.
Yeah.
And that's a process. You're not going to wake up one day and be like, I'm the most perfect me.
Right.
Like, this is a long journey.
Yeah. It's a life journey.
It's
right?
a life, a long life journey, literally. So I bring that up to say, you know, don't be afraid of being yourself, because if you are afraid of being yourself, you're going to become something that you're not, and you're really going to be afraid of that. And it's going to be very hard to unlearn and tell yourself that that's not who you are, you know.
Right.
And some people might say, oh, that's not who you are anymore. No, that was never who you were.
Yeah.
You know, you were just in a certain place of mind and in a certain mental state, you know. And so to kind of wrap up your question about what I want my legacy to be, is just like, you have to be okay with being an outcast. You just have to. And it sounds contradictory, but like I said, we're humans. We want that human connection. But sometimes you really just gotta say, I'm here for myself, you know? And I've said this before, and some people may take it the wrong way. Even if the entire world turns their back on me, I know that I got my back, you know? Because that's what a real leader is.
Yeah.
You know, a real leader is not afraid to take that step in a different direction.
Sometimes you have to, right?
Sometimes you just have to.
Yeah.
You can be the one that's right, and everyone else could be wrong, you know. But then again, right and wrong is kind of relative.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really interesting, too, because love that for your legacy, by the way. But I think I don't know if you ever hear stories about people, you know, that have made it big, right, and whatever their craft is. A lot of times they mention stuff like that, where there's a lot of people that were close to them, and usually it's people that are close to you because they care about you, that told them, why are you doing this? Why are you going your own way, right? But yet they still found a way to do that. Or they kind of just, you know, at times they did feel that, right? No one understood what they were doing until they made it, right? But then it always looks like it's kind of an overnight thing, right? But really they've been grinding behind the scenes for years and years and years usually. Yeah. I think that's interesting too, that, you know, again, and I think part of that connects to finding a good support system that's going to support you being the authentic self, or the authentic version of yourself that you want to be. And I think too, it's surrounding yourself with people that want to see you grow, I think is so important, and it's so underrated, right? We get comfortable, right? But if your people that are close to you that you care about aren't challenging you to be better, what are you doing, right?
Right.
Because that's part of that life journey, is you should look to get better every day, at least in my opinion. But I think that's interesting. But I can see how that kind of connects with your kind of idea of sometimes you gotta be willing to be alone in some areas, or to take that step, you know, go a direction that maybe not everyone else is going.
Yeah. And kind of what you're saying, like, one thing I also strive for is, and this is hard, you have to accept who you are today, right now. Whether, like I said, whether you are the worst human being on this planet or the best, accept who you are today, and tell yourself that tomorrow I'm going to try to do something better, or try to do something new, or try to do something nice, or try to do something good. You know, it's a long life journey. literally. And I say that because we are not promised tomorrow. So
very true.
You're not gonna wake up one day and just be, like I said, the perfect you. So you have to accept who you are today, and it's hard. It takes a lot of being alone. Literally, it takes a lot of being alone and reflecting back on your life and what, you know, how you want to feel about yourself. You know what I'm saying? Going back to that love may seem like something that you give out to people, you know, whether you got a cat or a business or a mother, you know, it seems like a thing that you only push out, but like you can love yourself too.
Yeah.
And I think really the way to love yourself is by isolating yourself sometimes and doing that reflection.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by, even though we are humans and we want that connection with other human beings, sometimes we allow the outside world to dictate who we are, and then we forget who we are. You know,
that right there.
That's the thing. You know, if you show up for yourself every day, you know, and you do what it is that you feel is right for you without any outside influence. I mean, there will be a time, like, I'm not gonna lie, there will be a day where you feel like, man, can't nobody stop me from being me. You know, I could walk in a room with 1,000 people and everyone could say my outfit looks trash, but I didn't wear this outfit every single day and I like how I look. So if I like how I look, then it don't matter what all these other 1,000 people said, because they don't know me. They probably don't even know themselves.
Yeah.
You know, they just regurgitating what everybody else hears. It could be some people in that crowd of 1,000 people who actually does like your outfit, but they probably feel like if they say they like your outfit, you would be excluded too.
Yeah, they want to be in the minority of that situation, right?
Right.
Because again, we want to go be a part. We want to be accepted in the group, right? Naturally.
Right. So I like what you said about the word minority, because a lot of times when you hear minority, you think of like race or like culture.
Yeah.
The way I think about minority is a lot of different things. A minority of thought, a minority of, you know, beliefs, a minority of type of music that I like. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I always tell myself this. There's a bell curve of humans. And I'm at the most end of the bell curve. You know, I am not only a actual minority, but like I'm a minority of the minority. You know what I mean? Of the minority. You know? So because I'm in so much different minority groups, there's no way to try to force myself to fit in. It doesn't work. African Americans, right? They say the reason why African Americans are kind of rebellious in a way, kind of do their own thing, is because we've already been excluded, you know? And it's kind of going back to what I was saying before. If I'm already being excluded from society and society deems me as, you know, this or that, then I'm going to do my own thing. You know, I'm as most outcast as possible, you know? That if you want to talk about default in America, you know, default is Caucasian white, you know, because that's majority. Christian, that's majority. Heterosexual, that's majority. The country that I live in is not really designed for me in a way. But that doesn't stop me. You know, it's not supposed to be. I don't want it to be. You know, I like that I could do my own thing and be myself. All groups have to deal with being held to a certain standard. But one thing I learned in Leadership Safari is, okay, yeah, people have identity, but there's another thing called intersectionality. And I think people really need to embrace their intersectionality. When you embrace your intersectionality, you really know who you are and you really embrace who you are. That's why I wanted to touch based on that word minority, because that's almost as equivalent of an outcast. You know, that's almost as equivalent as a leader. Come on now. Like, I knew I grew up and they said, be a leader, not a follower. Okay, yeah. But some people lead so good that, you know, you want to follow them.
Yeah.
You know,
you can do both, right? I think you should.
You should.
Personal expressive. That's how I learn, right? find that mentor, right, or that different leader,
right? But kind of like what you saying too is like mentors, leaders, people who you look up to. You got to do both, because maybe they may do something that you don't align with.
Exactly.
You know, you may like a certain celebrity or a certain business owner or whatever, and nowadays we live in a world where it's like cancel them.
Yeah.
But
you disagree on one thing, right?
But it's some stuff that you might have took away from that person that you really feel like, wow, you know what I mean? Same with me. Like, I might lead by example, and I might be an example for someone who looks like me or someone who doesn't look like me. But there may be something else that I do that I believe in that people don't align with.
Right.
So what are you gonna do? Toss everything else out that I said? No, it's okay to disagree with me. You know, it's okay to be your own leader when I say something that you don't align with.
Right. We just really approach things, I think, right now, in general, and I think everyone does this in certain cases in different ways. I mean, no one's perfect, but really from that this or that. But what's in that middle? A lot of things are in that middle area, right? Like you just said, maybe you say something that's controversial, right, that I don't agree with.
Right.
Am I gonna ruin a relationship over that? I don't know. But it also comes down to what you value personally too. You know what I mean? Like, and what did you say? What does it mean? Does it affect me in a certain way? And of course, it's okay to, you know, cut people out of your life or kind of remove yourself from situations that you feel uncomfortable in and that maybe are a little bit toxic to you.
Yeah.
But it's like already sometimes maybe jumping the gun a little bit too much on that, where, you know, maybe we should come from a little bit more empathy approach, right? People make mistakes. Like, we all make mistakes, right?
We all make mistakes.
Right. And again, too, and that's up to you, right? And that's how you define that threshold. Maybe if that person then does that same thing again, then maybe you remove yourself a little bit more from that person. But again, everyone's different how they approach that. But it's interesting you bring that up, because I do think sometimes we could be a little bit more forgiving with people at times, even though it can be very challenging to do.
It is challenging. Everything is hard.
Yeah.
You know, life is not meant to be easy.
Exactly.
You know, I wear this hoodie because you have to find a way. Like, it's hard. You know, it doesn't get easier. You just get stronger, you know. And one thing that I like that you said, and by stronger, I don't mean physically, but, you know, mentally, spiritually, whatever, you know, community, whatever. But one thing you said is some people are like, it's either this or that. And that's really another thing that I want to touch base on. We live in a very this or that world, a very black and white world, a very 0 or 1 world. And that ain't the case, you know, and to kind of go in deeper in that is the world is kind of designed that way. So you could pick this or that.
Right, because you want to be in those groups, right? It's like a tribal human natural biology, right?
As if it's the only option, you know, and that's the thing. There's many options. There's infinite amount of options. And the best way I can word this is I don't think that people are lazy, you know. I just think people want it easy in a way where it's like, I'd rather just pick this, I'd rather just pick that, you know, because that's what's already given, you know, like you said, that those groups versus taking a step back and going, can I create my own, you know, and sometimes that's what I'm saying, it's hard to create
energy, right?
It takes energy.
You get a backlash, right? There's so many unknowns, or that fear I think holds people back too now, right? A lot of the time.
And honestly, like how I said this or that, you know, in black and white world, even in America, I'm black, Brandon's white. But, like, I'm not black. Brandon's not white. You know, I'm a certain shade of brown, and all the other people who identify as black or African American, they have many different shades of brown. You know, some way darker, some way lighter. Same with you. Caucasian people or white people or European American people, however you want to define, you know, your demographic. There's many different shades of you guys, and from different places too,
cultures,
different cultures, and different backgrounds, and we don't talk about that ever because it's such an uncomfortable conversation. You know, we generalize black people and we generalize white people, we generalize this group and that group and that group. It's not necessarily that we are bad people, but people are too lazy to go, you know, let me just look at this person as them, you know, that intersectionality,
right?
Instead of just generalizing,
right?
And sometimes generalizing does help. For like example, a tiger. If I see a tiger, oh my goodness,
right? What kind of tiger? It could be from a different region, right? There's different tigers, but it's like it could be a tiger.
It's a tiger. Like I might have to run.
Yeah.
But then again, that's also what I've been told my entire life. I've never even seen a tiger before. What if tigers are actually kind animals? That's all I've been taught, is that tigers will rip you to shreds. So what am I going to do? Run. And I have to bring that example up is because that's how we generalize people. We don't even know people, and we look at people and we assume that we know them. We go, oh, I'm not gonna mess with that person. I'm not gonna talk to that person. It's either this or that.
Right.
You know, no, we do not live in a this or that world.
Yeah.
We don't live in a black or white world. You know, it sounds very dividing. You know, like, what's the opposite of black? White. If you put black and you inverse the color, you know, it's white. So that's what I mean when I bring that example up. It's something as uncomfortable as race.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, if I said that to a group of people who looked at me, they'll look at me like I'm crazy because their entire life they've been told they're black. You know, which we are culturally, you know, socially. Like, do you really know what that means? Society tells you you're white. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? It's a lot of stuff that comes with that.
Right?
You know,
that's what it is. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that comes with that. Mm-hmm. You know, and that could be hard for people. You know, to feel like they have to live up to something so general. You know, there's many different types of black people, many different types of white people, even me saying it right now. I think that's another thing too. It's a quick thing to say.
Yeah.
You know. Am I going to sit here and say there's many different types of African-American people? Some people don't even like being called African-American. Right. You know, I don't even like saying white. But am I going to sit here and say European-American every single time? No, it's very quick. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think that's the reason why, too. You know, black is one syllable. White is one syllable. It's easier to kind of get it out.
Right.
That kind of goes into another thing, too. It's like we're very fast-paced here in America. You know, you don't really take the time to, like, think. Sometimes you have to take a step back and really question everything you've been told and just really see if it aligns with you.
Yeah.
You know, even if everyone else, like I said, thinks you're crazy or wants to outcast you. Mm-hmm. So to kind of wrap that up, you know, we do not live in a this or that world. We don't live in a black or white world, whether you want to think that. And I believe every human has the mental capacity to think beyond that. Take a moment to think about it. You know, we don't live in that type of world. At all.
Something you said too that I really want to touch upon one for a couple seconds is I think once we make assumptions or generalize, it's game over, right?
Right.
Because we've already put ourselves in a position or other people that we don't even know, where that judgment comes in, right? And what we're saying here is like that's not it's very easy to fall into those kind of things, right? So it's naturally how we react to things. It's what we've been doing our whole life. Some of it's obviously constructed by society or, you know, from stereotypes or your big deal, right? Like we all have that bias in us in certain different ways, but how can we consciously work on those things, I think is what we try to have to find and push against some of those things. And that's hard work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes we don't even know a lot of that stuff. Sometimes it is unconscious, right? But how do we push ourselves into new environments, new experiences to help us have a better understanding of some of those things?
Yeah. And think about it like this, a simple analogy. People always say this. Sometimes I drive back home and I forget I even drove. But when you drove back home that first time when you were 16 years old, you were kind of afraid.
Right, you were gripping that steering wheel super hard.
But you did it so much that it became second nature. Now when you drive home, you don't even think about it. Now watch this. You go to like Australia, they got you on the opposite side of the road. Now this is something that you're familiar with, but it's slightly different. Now that part of your mind has to like work now. Of course, we're not going to sit here and analyze every single thing we do. We don't consciously breathe. Right. We don't consciously walk. At one point, we had to consciously walk. 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, you know, as a baby. You know, the language we speak and the things we do and the day-to-day life that we live is very programmed in default, you know, because there's some part of us that just, that's the best way to conserve energy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to make my bed this same way. I'm going to take this same way to work. I'm going to talk to the same people.
Right.
Watch this. It's really just comfort zone.
Yeah, it really is.
And sometimes you got to be willing to expand your comfort zone just a little bit. Not discomfortable.
Right. That learning edge, right? We talked about too, exactly. Right? That pushes yourself a little bit.
Bringing all that back in.
Yeah.
Right.
It all connects.
That's why I really do love the Safari program, because it explains stuff in a way that I can't explain.
Yeah.
Or I can explain. I just explain it in a very detailed, example, metaphorical, kind of way, which is okay.
Which I think is the intent is to make it simple, right? Because it is a shorter program. People don't have a lot of time.
You're right.
But to pull out what you believe or what you think about it yourself, right? That further reflection work, right? I think that's where people get the most out of that if you do that reflection work. Or you see those concepts more than once. It's more of an intro, right, into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it has to be simple so everyone can kind of pull out something from that information, that experience. But, like, it's still individualized, right? And you can build that uniqueness from who you are. Yeah. And I think that's really what I vibe from the experience too, because you can be in that Safari group, right, and your understanding of part of a meeting can be completely different than another individual's, but you still find maybe that common ground, right, or you can still see how that things connect, or when you do those core values, right?
Exactly.
Our values are different. We might have some commonalities between them. Maybe you value something higher up than I would, but like we're still finding something out, but like it's again personalized to us.
Right.
It's hard to do that too, I think, in the world sometimes, but it's cool. It's very unique.
And no one's choice is better than anyone else's. Even now, like that's something where it's like I don't even think about every single day. Yeah. And there's 1,000+ students who come and they do this. Some of them don't like it. I love it. Like
people hate it. People love it.
Some
right?
people hate it. Some people love it. But think about it like this: that stuff has been subconsciously implanted in your brain from doing that program. You may not think about it or do it until 20 years later. You know, for me to talk about that comfort zone thing, I kind of forgot that we did that. It wasn't until we talked about it and you brought it up where I'm like, oh, okay. Like I appreciate that program because it touches base on a lot of different things like comfort zone and intersectionality and stuff like that. And you're just nervous because you're in a whole new city with a bunch of people you don't know. You know what I'm saying? So you might not register any of that stuff, but at some point there may be one day where you're like, wait a minute, I learned this in Safari.
A lot of amazing points here. We talked a lot about some different things that I think speak to who you are, right, and the way you think about certain issues, which I think is sometimes unique but very connective. There's things that I think are really interesting and I think important to talk about that maybe aren't always the easiest things to talk about. So I really appreciate you sharing your experience, being vulnerable, but also talking about some of those difficult, I think, conversations for a decent amount of people. And the only way we get better through that is by doing that more and thinking about through those things. So, alrighty, well, Melo, where can people find you? Let's throw that in there. We'll put it in the description. I know you're big on Instagram, but is there anything else that you have out there? YouTube channel, maybe TikTok page?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram page. It's my first and last name. People, like I said, don't know my name is Romel'O Ellis. That's the Instagram. There's some more stuff to come that you'll see, but I got a website, got a brand that I'm repping. But as long as you go to Instagram, you can find all that stuff because I have a link tree. So
sweet.
Yeah.
Well, Melo, thanks for being on the show. I mean, you're on the show every time, technically,
day.
But I got a little surprise too. Should we keep it a secret or should we give it to him? We can edit this depending on what you want to do. But Melo's gonna be on the show with me every Leadership in 20. Like we're gonna interview a student, so there'll be 3 of us. So it should be a great time.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a good time to learn more about from some amazing students we get to work with and see, and that are doing some really cool and pretty impactful things, not just on our campus, but in our community and in our world, right? And this is super cool.
Yeah, so. we want to hear your story. Like this is your moment to say how you feel and feel like you have a platform.
Yeah.
And like I told Brandon, shoot, you can post every single day on your Instagram, and you're reaching a certain audience that, you kind of know or cater to. But something like this, you may reach somebody who you never thought.
Exactly, or had the chance to. So
or ever had the chance.
People really resonate with those stories, right? And those metaphors and connections. So, again, that kind of wraps up what we have here for today. Leadership in 20, episode 1. Thanks for tuning in. We're excited to get these pumped out as well. And our regular scheduled podcast will still drop bi-weekly, right? So every other week we'll rotate on these. So stay tuned for episode 7 of Lean Into Leadership coming out soon. But yeah, for now, thanks for watching and keep leading the way.
Yeah, keep leading the way.
Yeah, take care. We'll see you next time. Peace.